Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery here. It is Monday, December 18th, 2023, and we get together with our distribution partners, clients, and prospective clients, distribution partners on a daily basis, most weekdays at this time. We did just send out an announcement to everyone about the holiday bonus. So let's start our discussion with that, see if there's any questions, and then we'll move on to the grant overall. So we have a problem and we'd like to get your help solving the problem. The problem is we have more workshops that we need to have covered than we have educators to teach them. So what we decided to do is to ask for your help and give you a financial incentive to help us. So the notice we sent out to each of you this morning is that we'll pay each of you $10,000 for each educator that you refer to us who will help us teach the workshops. So specifically what it said is it's a two-step process. You would first submit first you need to find out if there's someone that's willing to teach. Well, what is it we teach? We teach the 10 mistakes. So if they are interested in teaching, and of course they get paid for teaching, then you're going to submit them here and list yourself as the referral source. And then thirdly, you're going to help them go over here, click on this, it'll pop up and have them complete essentially the setup form. So with that, then we will send you next day. So we're doing this every day through Christmas. So any educators that you bring us today, we will pay you tomorrow, $10,000 in QuickCash, so the next day. So with that being said, there's no requirements. Let's say the person, you refer them in and they come aboard, and let's say they're not able to teach, or even they don't want to teach. You're not really caught up in what their performance is, but we need more educators. We have more workshops to conduct in person and online than we have staff to cover those. So we're asking for your help. So that's the notice that went out to each of you this morning. If you know of anyone that might want to teach, introduce, submit them on this form, and then help them complete here. All right. Any questions on that before we move forward? Normally we'll field questions, comments, concerns on the Q&A box of Zoom. It's kind of like a chat box. All right. So I think we're all good there. If anything comes up, go ahead and type it in and we'll address it. So what we like to cover on the morning sessions is the simple fact that you and I help small businesses with what's called the formula for funding. Straightforward, legal, ethical, transparent. You and I know something that frankly a lot of people don't know, and it's the very simple formula. What does it take for a business to be fundable? The business could be new, the business could be small, the business could be anywhere in the United States, but there's certain requirements for a business to be fundable. And that's what we teach about with this curriculum. That's what we applied for the grant for, and that's what we do through the Startup Business Funding Package. So let's go ahead and spend a couple minutes going through what the grant covers, how it works, and of course, to answer any of your questions. So when it comes to the elements for a fundable business, this is not a debate. It's not a matter of opinion, of your opinion versus someone else's opinion or our opinion. It's a matter of fact. This is what it takes for a business to be fundable. You know that, I know that, but unfortunately, a lot of other people don't know that. So that's why we teach. The first element that's needed to have a fundable business. Now, these bullets are actually in order. So this is the order that we go through when we're implementing the grant. And it's really the order that an entrepreneur should follow. So even if there's a small business owner that didn't want to participate in the grant, they just wanted to know how to have a fundable business, we teach them that they don't have to pay anything to learn how to have a fundable business, and they could follow the steps on their own. But with that being said, the first thing that we need to have is to have a true, unique commercial address. I'm going to dig into that a little bit deeper because sometimes people want to take a superficial approach. And I'm not talking about you individually, but many people just want to skim the surface and move on. And when they don't really understand what's needed to be fundable, then they make mistakes. So when we talk about a unique business address, so of course, that's not a residential address. Obviously, it's not a post office box. It's not a shared virtual address where the client has the same suite number as other people. It needs to be a unique suite number. We also are going to need to have the documentation to support it. So this is where we see some people come up short. They think, oh, okay, great. I have an address. Check that box, move on. Do you have a signed lease that validates that that is your business address? A real lease. Does that lease match the term of the repayment of the loan that you want? What do I mean by that? Well, most of us would want to have smaller payments, right? If we're going to borrow money, we probably would rather have smaller payments than bigger payments. Well, what makes them smaller? The lower the interest rate and the longer the term. So normally for working capital loans, it's normally 120 months, 10 years. So think about that for a second. To meet the credibility criteria here, yes, we need to have a unique commercial address that's in the name of our business. That's real, it's a real address. But also we need to have a written lease, and that lease needs to match the term of the repayment of the loan we want. So yes, if you're inferring, well, wait a second, so I would need to produce a lease that shows that it's a 10-year lease if I want a 10-year repayment term on my loan? Yes. Now, is there a way around that? Can you backdoor it? Absolutely. You want to know how to backdoor it? Go buy a building. Go buy your own commercial building, or the client can go buy their own building. Then they don't need a lease because they have ownership. But that's not practical for a lot of the clients that you and I work with. But the good news is, through the grant, we provide them a free address. Let's move on. So once we have the address, now we need to make sure that our entity is in good standing with the Secretary of State. Now there's 50 states, 50 secretaries of state, of course, so it's relevant to which state your business is formed in. If the business hasn't been formed, then of course it needs to be formed. If it has been formed, it needs to be in good standing. Through the grant, we will form a business entity for each participant. For how much? Free. You see lots of free. We're not even down here. Free. Now, once we have an address and we have an entity that is filed and in good standing with the Secretary of State, the next step is we need to have an EIN. It's kind of like a social security number, but for our business. And then we need to open a business bank account. Once we have those first three bullets covered, now we have the structure, the foundation of a credible business. Where a lot of people make a mistake, and I don't think that you would make this mistake, and I'm pretty sure I won't, but many people will think, oh, great, I'm ready to go to funding. I have these things, I have a good address, I have a good entity standing with the Secretary of State, I've got my EIN, I got my bank account, I am ready to go to funding. And that's wrong. That is flat out wrong. That's inadequate. Now, is it possible that they could get some funding at that point? Yeah, it's possible, but they certainly are not yet meeting the requirements of having a fundable business. There's two more bullets to go, which we're going to go through. Then we go to funding. Okay, so once we have these three elements in place, now we got a question from Brian. Brian says, well, what if the client already has this? Then great. We don't have, if it's not broke, we don't need to fix it. So it is certainly true, Brian, that clients could bring some elements of this to the table and it just accelerates the process. That's fine. Let's say they have none of them, they have some of them. Now, if they have all of them, they really don't qualify for the grant. They're overqualified. They don't need the grant, right? It's like if you have a high school diploma, you don't need the GED. You just don't need it. Why bother? But for clients that don't meet all these criteria, then this is the checklist. All right, so once we have those three elements, then what do we need to do next? And again, the order matters. The order matters. The next thing we're going to do is create legally and ethically. I say that, and I feel like it's a waste of time every time I say legally and ethically, but just to help you feel rest assured, everything that we're doing here is legal and ethical. Next, we need to build the credit worthiness of the business. I was doing a workshop yesterday, and we had a wonderful couple, husband and wife, that was there, and they're like, well, my personal, or their personal credit's not so good. We're not talking about personal credit. We're talking about business credit. We're not talking about personal funding. We're talking about business funding. We've got to get out of this mindset of looking at everything through the eyes of the consumer. We're talking about business funding, business credibility, business. So what we're going to do here, how much do we charge? It's free. We're going to build out the credit worthiness of the business. How do we do that? It's a two-step process, quite frankly. First, we're going to make sure that the profile of the business, like with Dun & Bradstreet, Experian Business, make sure that the profile is optimized. Yes, legally and ethically, of course. So does it have the right industry code? Does it have the right address? Does it have the right employee count? Does it have the right information? Then we're going to start adding primary trade lines. And people love this because primary trade lines means what it says. These are real trade lines that the client is able to use. So sometimes people want examples. They need tangible examples. Well, what's a primary trade line? Well, we could get them a company car. That's very common. Not required, but very common, right? If we have a business, why not get a company car? We probably need transportation anyway. Now it's 100% tax deductible. And with that being said, then if the vehicle qualifies, we can use Section 179 of the IRS tax code, use accelerated depreciation. So that's one example, company vehicle. We could get multiple company vehicles. We could get company credit cards. There's lots of different trade lines, but what you hear me saying is these are real, right? That these are actual extensions of credit reporting on the EIN, not on the social security number of the owner or the owners. So then that takes us to the last bullet to become fundable. Then we go to funding, but we're not ready yet. So we have the entity set up properly. We've covered that. We're building out the business credit worthiness by adding primary trade lines. Now we need to make sure that our financials are strong. Well, what does that mean? Well, first, the business needs to have financials. So we're going to make sure that each participant has financials, like a balance sheet, for example. To each of you, you would probably scoff at this. You would say, well, that's crazy. A lot of these small business owners don't have a balance sheet. Some of them don't even know what a balance sheet is. So we're going to make sure that they know what a balance sheet is. We're going to help them create a balance sheet, which of course shows the assets and liabilities of the business. Now, you might say, well, what good is that going to do? It's a brand new business. They don't have any assets. They don't have any liabilities. Well, you're right. That would be bad. So what we're going to do is not only create financials, but optimize them legally and ethically. So we're going to actually transfer over $10,000. We call it QuickCash. We're going to transfer over $10,000 to each participant and help them put it on their balance sheet. It's real assets. And so now the client has collateral. So I see Ken's asking a question, and Ken, you're right. So what we're trying to incentivize each of you, as I started with the call, is we'll give each of you $10,000 for every new financial literacy educator that you bring us. That's kind of a different topic than the stream that we're going through, but that's where we started the conversation. We need more financial literacy educators, and Ken just picked up on the fact that, yes, this is what we're talking about. We'll give you this. You don't have to enroll. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to pay the $10,000 back, but we'll give each of you next day, transfer the $10,000 if you'll do what we talked about at the earlier point of the call. find people that are willing to teach. Obviously, what they're teaching is here. Submit them here with your information as referred by, help them complete this. And then tomorrow, the next day, next business day, we'll literally send you QuickCash, just like we do each of these participants. So, but back to the process. So the bottom line is, once we have the foundation built, we've created credibility, creditworthiness, I should say, and then we have financials with collateral. Now the business is ready to go to funding. And so there's many, many different places. I get questioned frequently, well, which bank can we go to? And I got that question yesterday from one of our long-term branches. The difference isn't now we do have some unique relationships like the Chapman Fund, like Stearns Bank and others, but in general that's not really the point. The point is we need to create a fundable business. By creating a fundable business, now we're able to go get funding lots of different places. But the Chapman Fund is a unique one. So the Chapman Fund is from a taxing authority. So what does that mean? Instead of going to a bank or a credit union or an alternative lender where we got to jump through a bunch of hoops, we can actually go to the Chapman Fund and get funding to start a business, which is awesome. The downside is this, is they have a hard cap. They will not go more than 250,000. Some people get irate with that. Well, how do we work around that cap? Well, we could use the Chapman Fund for the first tranche and then go after more money from other places. Makes sense. Or some people are going through the process multiple times. So those are two workarounds. But the bottom line is we have a 501c3 nonprofit. We've been in operation since 2016. We work with the SBA and FDIC through the Money Smart for Small Business Initiative. We work with distribution partners and strategic partners across the country, like many of you. And we're here to answer your questions. So hopefully at this point, you understand what the grant is, why it's packaged this way, what we deliver. There's no risk to the client. We actually pay them to participate. I mean, if you look at it truthfully, we pay every participant to participate. And then again, we're in a little bit of a tough position now. We have more workshops to teach than we have staffing. If you'll help us with that, we'll give you the 10,000 for just helping bring us more educators. Okay, so anyone that has questions, comments, concerns, you're going to go ahead and type that into the Q&A box. It's like a chat box on Zoom, and we'll go through it. All right, so it looks like I have a question from Samantha, and Samantha asks, can we talk about how this came about? So certainly. So Samantha, as I mentioned, our 501c3 started back in 2016. The initiative, the concept actually started much earlier, but it really manifested in this time frame. And the reason why is a group of us were teachers. And you've probably heard this story, but I was a high school teacher in Aubrey, Texas, Aubrey. And I taught Accounting 1, Accounting 2, Business Information Management, Economics, and Computer Programming. And I was also a coach, a UIL coach. So not an athletic coach, but an academic coach. So we had teams and we would travel around the state and compete against other schools. We actually won the state championship one year when I was there. But the point is, I was asked to put this curriculum together to educate high school students. We wanted really a leading edge business curriculum for high school students. And so a lot of this, not exactly, but a lot of this was built into the class. So here we are teaching these high school, mainly juniors and seniors, sometimes younger. We were developing business plans. We got so much attention, the national press came in. You can go back and look us up and see. We actually made the national press, and I'm trying to remember the name of the article, but the concept was it's okay to fail, because everyone put together a business plan And we learned from that experience that it was okay if the business didn't succeed because at least they had gone through the process. But regardless, so here we are teaching something very similar to this to these high school students. And then all of a sudden, the principal, who was my boss as a teacher, your boss is the principal, started getting these inquiries from parents and community members saying, what the hell are you teaching these kids at the high school? Not because it was controversial, but these kids are going home and knowing more about business than their parents. And so we started getting requests from the community to teach. And so it's like, well, as a high school teacher, you can't have adults come in and sit on these classes for a number of reasons. So that's when, frankly, we formed the nonprofit and started teaching in the community. We started getting requests from churches and chambers and apartment complexes and started teaching what does it take to create a fundable business. So fast forward a few years and here we are now. So now we're asking you, would you go out and help us teach this curriculum? You might say, well, what am I going to teach? It's right here. It's right here. So you can view it. Takes about an hour to teach it in person, about 30 minutes online. And it's not a volunteer, but it's not get rich quick. And so some of you won't be interested probably because of that. But the bottom line is you're paid right about $1,000 per attendee, per participant. So just figure on average, you'll make about, let's just say about $10,000 per workshop that you teach. So, I mean, it's a good side gig, but it's not going to replace the money that you're making now. It's not get rich quick. But with that being said, there you have it. Terrell John says, ho, and I'll give you ho back, Terrell John. I guess that's a type of greeting. Good to hear from you. Audrey asked about assigning workshops. Yeah, so certainly you'll be empowered to set up your own workshops, and then we need help too with ours. But part of being one of our what we call distribution partners, which you can do right here, is that you're provided materials and support and training. So for example, you'll have an editable version of the PowerPoint, you'll have an editable version of the press release, you'll have an editable version of the proposal, you'll have all the resources you need so you can set up workshops if you would like. And then also we have workshops that we need help with. And that's why we're offering each of you 10 grand just to help us bring more educators. Be a headhunter. This isn't MLM or anything like that, but think of yourself as a headhunter. We need educators. And if you can help us bring educators, we can make it worth your while because we have workshops that we need to cover. All right. So what other questions does anyone have regarding the grant, the startup package, what it takes to have a fundable business? Larry's asking a good question, and it's a very relevant one. And it's somewhere between frustrating and confusing, but Larry's right in what he's stating here is that you and I can go out and we'll teach people and we'll do a great job of teaching them, but sometimes they don't seem to assimilate it. So you just have to treat them with love and respect and reiterate, if you want funding for a business, you need to have a fundable business. Statement one. And then you could ask them, is your business fundable? They probably don't know what that means. Now, if they've sat through your training, they should. But what does it mean to have a fundable business? Well, do you have a good commercial address with a lease, a written lease that matches the term of the loan that you want? Yes or no? Now, people will give you lots of excuses. I had great credit before the War of 1912. Well, none of that matters. We're talking about, do you have a good commercial address? Do you have a business that's in good standing with the Secretary of State? Do you have an EIN with a business bank account? Do you have good business credit established? Do you have good financials with collateral? If the answer is not yes to all of those, then the client's not fundable. But that's great. When they say no, that's great, because now you know that they need the grant, they need the program, and you're able to monetize helping them with that. Pearlie asked, how long is the training to get set up to teach? Everyone that enrolls today, we should have you ready to teach tomorrow. So within 24 hours, you should be up and running, ready to teach. So less than a day, less than a day. All right, who else has questions, comments, concerns? Because frankly, it's not that complicated. It's really not. I think many of you are so smart, you want to sometimes make things more complicated than they are, right? It's real simple. Let's do the simple version of this in 1 minute. Hey, we're with a grant, a nonprofit that received a grant. We help businesses become fundable. We provide the scope of services needed to have a fundable business. Then we'll help you go to funding. If you want to participate, it's crazy simple. Come over to chapmanloanprogram.org, put in your name, your email, your phone, referred by, submit, and then we'll get you set up. Now, also, they can go through the step 1 and step 2. And if they want to become a distribution partner, it's here, but just don't overcomplicate it. It's not that complicated. There's steps, it's a sequence, it's a process, but we know what it is, right? We tell the world what it is. All right, well, thank you all for your time. We'll get back together tomorrow morning, same time, same place. If you need assistance, you know how to reach us by phone, by email. Let us know what we can do to help you. If you're looking for funding, we can get it. If you're looking for some money tomorrow, help us build out our distribution partners, and we'll plug you into the QuickCash incentive that I emailed each of you this morning. That's a limited time incentive we call the holiday bonus. We want to send you $10,000 a day next day, each day that you help bring us a new distribution partner, a new educator, because we need help teaching these workshops. Thanks, everyone. See you back tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.